Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous, and here is her story. Hi, Ollie. Thank you for your work. It is good work. Goodness, it is close. Goodness is close to God. I believe because God is truth, and shining light on this sinister darkness is a good thing. It has helped me on this journey toward healing. I started uncovering this BS in 2016 when I hit rock bottom. I have always believed where there is life, there is hope. But after being on the receiving end of narcissistic rage and abuse, I was left in a deep pit of darkness. My hands bound, my neck squeezed so tight I dare not utter a word of shame, disgust, and humiliation I received. It was ugly, and in that moment, so was I. But I must start at the beginning of this horrible story. I have a long history of abuse, so I'll cut this up into bits and pieces. Through writing my story, I hope to relive the tightness I feel around my neck. The cold, uncaring hands around my neck in order to silence me has seemingly always been there. They have always tried to shut me up. You talk too much. My mother would scream in my face. I think it started when I was 5 or 6 years old. I knew I talked too much, but it was like a compulsion I could not stop as a child. I had to get it out. I was always bubbling. I had to get it out. Over the years, I learned to hold it like a tightrope twisting in my insides. I would find in the future years this was not a good idea as my body would begin rejecting holding it all in. I started busting at the seams in many different ways. I am American born and raised. My family of origin is Nigerian. My father is born from a polygamous family. His father, a wealthy interpreter for the British courts in Nigeria, could afford more than one wife. So he had 3 and about 25 some children, most which migrated to the U.S. Oh, God. My father's mother was the second or third wife. Suffice to say, polygamy is now frowned upon in Nigeria and discouraged due to Christianity and the ill consequences of women sister-wives fighting for resources for their children, poisoning, sabotaging, cheating, etc. I have come to find out my grandfather had more wives, but elders in the village forced him to send them back to their fathers' homes. My mother came from poverty. Her parents died when she was young, and her older siblings helped raise her. She married my father, who was 8 years older, and at some point, he was a teacher in school. I'm not sure if that was in college or high school. I remember a story my parents used to tell me about how my father had a decision to make between another woman and my mother. My father picked my mother. He would say it as if she was special for being like a dog. See, this is how these cultures think of people and think of women and think of their. They pick them out like dogs. Multiple. Wife hoarding. It's just wife hoarding. That's all it is. Like some people hoard junk, some people hoard animals. Polygamists hoard wives. It's just another form of hoarding. Cult-like hoarding, to be honest with you. I always thought it was a strange story, but I never looked further because I always put my father on a pedestal. He was the good one compared to my mother. I trusted him more than her, and he was nice to me compared to her. But as I dig further into this sick tale, he was just as guilty as her, if not more. That was a very very bitter pill to swallow, as I always thought in my life I at least had my father. Your father... You had your father had a lot of people. My parents moved to the USA in the 1970s, acquired citizenship, raised 6 kids in the suburbs. My mother was a nurse and my father worked at the airport, who was also a mathematician, then engineer. Both highly educated. I was the only girl in the family. People would always gush about how special I was and how they must have spoiled me. This fucked me up because, yes, my parents spoiled me with gifts and pretty clothes, but I was often beaten by my mother for losing my earrings, dirtying up my clothes, or playing with other children in the neighborhood at the Nigerian get-togethers. This was always the case. I can remember her rages at me started when I was 5 years old. She wanted me to sit still right by her side like a doll and not play and run around with the other children. I think it was a way for her to show off that her little girl was so pretty and well behaved. I was also accused by and beaten by my father at times for things I did not do. Torturous time spent straightening my hair with a hot comb after burning my scalp with relaxers. I cried for my father as she yelled angrily with no compassion to sit still. So another black female being taught to hate her hair by her black mother. My brothers laughed as tears ran down my face. My father did not save me. Relaxers take off a layer of skin. Imagine a hot comb on the scalp and tight braids after all. My mother, because my father was a hot comb user, used to call it the fucking yellow bird because the fucking douchebag would stand there in the full-length mirror naked with this fucking yellow monstrosity, this hot comb that he would use to fluff up his hair because he was going bald and he couldn't, so it was like, ooh, this fucking hot comb. And then my mother was like, oh, that's what you need because your hair is so kinky. Or as she used to call it, nigger hair. And then run this fucking hot comb through my kinky hair. Yeah, that was always fun. The old fucking yellow bird coming out. The hot comb. Oh, God, does that bring that fucking hot. I remember the noise it made. This yellow hot comb. The yellow bird. I think Precious actually gave it that name, making fun of my father. He used to do an impression of my father doing the fucking, he used to make this fucked up face, like with his lips, like, what a dick. What a douche. How does the hot comb work with the Rogaine, fuckhead? Oftentimes, she would send me to the hairdresser. She would drop me off in the morning with random strangers that would do my hair. She would come back late to pick me up. Maybe a pack of cookies to eat while I was there all day. Some of the hairdressers were mean and impatient with me because it hurt so much when they braided my hair. I cried all the time. I was tender-headed. Something was wrong. Everybody's tender-headed when they're ripping at your head like that. Something was wrong with me because it hurt when they were pulling out my hair follicles. I used to have to take Tylenol and sleep with my head in my hands for a few days after getting my hair done. I'm now natural with dreads. Best decision ever. Nobody cares for my hair but me now. So when you started just doing your hair naturally, you're fine, huh? Funny. There were torturous trips to the mall where she would force me to try on so many clothes. I was allowed no privacy. I hated undressing in front of her or anyone. I had great shame about my body. She did not care, and she would often criticize me for my poor hygiene, but she barely taught me anything about feminine hygiene or care. I had to figure it all out over the years in embarrassing ways as a young girl. As I tried on clothing, she berated me for being selfish and ungrateful. To this day, my mother cannot give me a gift without insulting me in some way. So I stopped taking her expensive gifts of jewelry, purses, clothing, etc. I told her a few years ago, giving me gifts I did not ask for is not a license to berate me. But that's why she's doing it. She thinks it is. She wants to give you gifts and then shit on you for taking them. You can't win for losing. It was like accepting gifts from her was proof of how much of an ingrate I was. I hated it, so I stopped taking gifts from her. This made her livid, and she would try to get my golden child brother to guilt me into accepting them. Pretty, beautiful, gorgeous. These are not words uncommon to me. But as time went by, it became a very heavy burden of being the beautiful one in the family, to show off and smile. So sweet, throw up, starve yourself if you have to. I'm pretty sure everyone in my family knows about my eating disorder, but no one says anything because it's better than being fat. The first person I ever saw forcing herself to throw up was my mother. She was feeling sick after eating something, so in the bathroom when I was with her, I must have been 8 or 9, she bent over the sink and proceeded to force the food out of her. I was standing watching her. I never connected the dots. I always thought my bulimia stemmed from watching TV and my mother and father complaining about my weight gain when I was 8 or 9. Why did she have me there watching her do that? My mother would show me off with pride, but when we got home, it was another story of rage. She would go on how I never sit still, running around, not behaving. But looking back, I was behaving like the other children. Your child would do this 100 times worse. She would curse at me. You're not allowed to be a child. I have been delving more into my past. I am feeling like there is more to her showing me off and being over-sexualized as a young girl. I'm 5'11" and always looked older than my age. I was molested as a child when I was 7 or 8. Many years of guilt, shame, and self-loathing. Another story for another day. It was another issue my mother used to shame me. There are many instances of how I got messed up. I will start with the marriage visa and the baby tie. My mother for some time was trying to get her younger brother into the U.S. This was after it was easy for West Africans to immigrate to the U.S. in the 70s. She was trying this in the 1990s. She came up with this idea to get a woman she knew from work somewhere to marry her brother in Nigeria so he could get a visa. Like, it just the immigration scams just never stop, and they do it so easily. They do it so easily, these immigration scams. Wait, you're Nigerian? Do you know this prince who keeps emailing me, by the way? Apparently I'm a millionaire. It could really help the country. If you can help me out with that anonymous, I'd appreciate it. There's a lot of Nigerian princes. That's all I know. There seems to be a lot of them. I don't know what she offered Livy, but the woman agreed. She flew to Nigeria to meet my uncle and stayed with him for some months. My uncle My uncle was denied a marriage visa because in their harebrained scheme, they did not tell Livy he was planning on claiming his 5 nieces and nephews were his children from another religion. Just more immigration fraud. I'm going to freak out. I'm sorry. This is what happens. This is what happened. Chain migration. At least it didn't go through. So Livy came back to the USA. She became back pregnant. My mother and uncle denied the baby was his. They said that the dates did not add up. I ended up being dumped, forced to stay in Nigeria for 7 years. When talking to my cousins who my uncle lived with for years, they said he was sleeping with her regularly. To this day, Livy still claims the baby is my uncle's. Of course it is. At some point, my mother had her live with us. Livy was acting erratic and mentally unstable. I don't know if this was her baseline or she was suffering from some postpartum depression. I'm wondering if Livy knew about the scam, or did she really think my uncle wanted to be her husband? I don't know. I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade when this happened. Well, who do you think your mother is going to find to fly to Nigeria and marry your brother with the full set, with the intention to bring? Like, you're not going to get somebody with a full deck. It's either a criminal or somebody not playing with a full deck. Probably from what you're describing, it's the latter. Eventually, my parents kicked out, but they kept the baby. I think Livy and my parents agreed it would be better for Ty to stay with us, and my parents became foster parents for Ty. I So they became foster. That means they were getting government money for him now as well, right? Right? I remember when I was in third grade, Tide moved into my room and I was forced to be his caregiver, feed him, hold him, console him, etc. I was so young and did not know what I was doing. It hurts till this. It hurts till this. It hurts till this say to think. Wait a minute. It hurts till this say to think of him. It hurts to say this to think of him because I feel like I made a lot of mistakes caring for. You're a child. You're a child. I would be late for school waiting for my mother's friend Rhonda to pick him up to babysit. Rhonda was a nasty, abusive bitch. I think the movie Precious. Think of the movie Precious, big, fat, and bitter. She was so violent. She would beat us other kids. She was fighting a grown man. I remember she would beat Ty for crying. He was so terrified of her. Ty did not dare cry around her. This is when she was around 2 years old. My brother helped a little with Ty, but it really fell on my shoulders since I was the girl in the family. Our house was always a mess and kids liked our house. Our house was always in a mess and kids liked our house because our parents were never home. CPS would make visits. My brother and I would rush to clean the house before we scared Ty because we were scared Ty would be taken away. My parents blamed us for the house being dirty and CPS coming back to check on Ty. And this is where, because they saw you were immigrants, they saw you were black, and they didn't want to touch it. And they would rather allow you to live in squalor. I went from being a straight A kid who loved school to flunking. My teachers were not happy with my regular tardiness and my lack of motivation for schoolwork. My mother and father started to berate me for poor grades. My parents were hardly around. My mother worked 60-plus hours as a nurse, and my father worked 40 hours. The rest of his free time was spent at church, praying and having a priest bless our house. My father was a very paranoid man who worried people were out to get him and his children. Why was he praying so much when his kids needed him as a father to be present? Because he was running away, that's why. Because it's a lot of third world hocus pocus, even though your father was educated. He's coming from polygamy. Polygamy. What do you expect? Bunch of thieves living in squalor, forcing their child to raise a child that was going to be used as part of a grander immigration scam. As my behavior and grades got worse, my mother would rage at home because I was so disrespectful and causing her to have high blood pressure. To this day, I don't understand why she would blame me for her stress and high blood pressure. I did not get into much trouble as a child, just wanted to play with other kids in the neighborhood and be included with my brothers. My misbehavior and my inability to be controlled led to my mother sending me to live with my aunt. This was the first time I was dumped. The second was in Nigeria when I was 12 years old. I did not want to go. I cried in the car as my father drove me there. I always thought he was on my side, but he never was. He allowed this to happen and sent me to live there. While I lived with my aunt, Ty was sent to foster care. When I saw my family again, my mother said she had given him up for foster care because he had behavior problems. Livy was causing chaos and CPS was getting involved. Her nursing license was at risk. Ty was gone and I never saw him again. It hurts to think of him. After coming back from my exile in Nigeria, I talked about Ty and demanded my mother help me find him. I had to know he was okay. She refused. He is probably messed up from being in foster care and does not want to bring trouble in our family. And he is not my uncle's baby. Fuck her. Because of this BS, till this day I can remember Ty's face. In my mind, he looks like my uncle, even with the same dimple on his chin. I wonder if my uncle is receiving karma. He is in his 50s now. He and his wife have been trying for years to have children. They cannot. I spent the majority of my life fixing, helping, ruminating, loathing. Here I am, 33, single, alone, and trust issues. I take comfort in being alone, and I am now angry at the time these people stole from me. Now I am left alone. Thank you for reading this chapter. It helps get it out. Anonymous. Your story's not, though I've never had anybody sent back to Nigeria, whether you have money, whether it's not about money. It's not about money. It's not about wealth. It's about culture. Okay? And your family came from there's parts of Nigeria I know that are industrialized, and it seems like your family is better off than most Nigerians, but there are still the same behaviors that black women in the inner cities deal with, the same hatred from the mothers that the black women in the Caribbean islands deal with. It's the same base level of hatred, the same tactics of getting you to hate your own skin, to hate your own hair, to hate yourself, to treat you like some kind of another black Cinderella. At 7 or 8, as a school child, being forced to raise a child that they only have because their fucking immigration scam blew up in their face. They are grifters and you're better than them. It's their culture. It's what they come from. It's what they like. They like it. They have no problem buying and selling people, using them for their own needs, and then discarding them whenever they feel like it. The only answer is no contact when you're a black Cinderella. The only answer. And that's what you are. A black Cinderella. You were allowed to be Cinderella when you were with her, but it was back up locked in your room to scrub and raise a child that otherwise. No contact is the only answer for a black Cinderella. Period. And I hope that helps. Thank you, Anonymous, for your contribution and your story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, or a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.